Hi, I'm Gail Sokol and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making a lightened maple pecan pound cake. And one of my subscribers, Lori, had asked me if I knew any lighter pound cake. She loves pound cake, and Lori, this one's for you. So I thought it would be really fun to make the pound cake in these gorgeous, cutesy little bundt pans. And they're a little smaller than a standard size bundt pan, but they are beautiful and they're a little temperamental sometimes. But they, with a few tricks, I'll help you get the cake out of the pan, not a problem. So the first thing you want to do is prep your cake pan. We don't want to worry about the batter just yet. So very important, because it's got a lot of nooks and crannies, as you can see, inside, and a beautiful pattern on the outside. We want to take some neutral oil. So I have some canola oil. Don't spray this with nonstick cooking spray. You'll ruin your pan. And you want to take a pastry brush and you want to coat every little nook and cranny. Every little nook and cranny. And if it pools a little bit on the bottom, that's okay. But you're probably going to be using maybe a tablespoon or so. If you go for a little more of a tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon and a half, that's fine. But make sure you get in every nook and cranny and into that middle section as well. So keep going around and do it methodically. Don't skip one, because these pans, again, the cake is a little fussy coming out. It's doable, but it's fussy. And I'm going to give you all my tips and tricks, because the first couple of times I used this, I did have problems. And then I learned. So I'm going to help you not make the same mistakes I did. Okay, so we've oiled it, and now it's very important to flour it. So I'm going to take some all-purpose flour. I'm going to take about a tablespoon or two, and I'm just going to put it all the way around. All right, and then I'm going to go to my sink, and I'm going to knock it around. Knock it all the way around. And then knock out the excess flour, okay? And there you have it. So before we start our batter, once you put the batter in here, you don't want to fill it to the top. So this batter is going to come up maybe halfway to 2/3, that's it. And when it comes out of the oven, believe it or not, you're going to let it cool like this for about 5 or 10 minutes. Then you're going to take a cake rack. You're going to put it like this. Flip it over and let it cool fully on this cake rack. And then you're going to try to take it out, okay? And it should come out very nicely. All right, are we ready to make the batter? I am. All right, so we're ready to start our batter, but we have a few things to do ahead of time, and I call this our mise en place, and that's what chefs usually do, to do a few things ahead to get things ready for baking. So before we actually build our batter, we're going to take 3 cups of all-purpose flour, and we're going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/2 teaspoon of table salt. Some people like to use kosher salt. If you want it, that's fine too. And you want to whisk them together. Some people don't whisk their ingredients together, and they think that the electric mixer is just going to bring them together automatically, and that does not happen. And sometimes you can get pockets of chemical leaveners, your baking powder and your baking soda, and it'll leave holes where there's just a little extra carbon dioxide or air bubbles, and they grow and it looks like a little cave in there, and you don't want that. So once this is beautifully blended together, you're all set, and that's going to get ready and go in line for our batter. The next thing we want to do is get our liquid ingredients ready. So in here I have 2 tablespoons of really high quality maple syrup. Don't be skimpy, because this is a delicious cake. And then I have 1 cup, remember it's a lightened pound cake. This is fat-free plain yogurt. You can use vanilla yogurt if you want, but plain yogurt works fine. And you don't have to drain it, you just put it in. All right. And then I have 1 teaspoon of maple extract, smells yummy, and a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Put that right in there. And just whisk that up. And what we're going to be doing to build our batter, we're going to be building an emulsion. We're going to be creating an emulsion. And that's what most cake batters are. And we're going to be using something that I've talked about on my podcasts, and I talk a lot about in my book. It's known as the creaming method of mixing. And there's a lot of mixing methods, not a lot, but there's a few, especially for cakes. So you'll see that when we start building this emulsion, you'll see I'm going to take you through it. All right, so we're ready to get our batter going. And remember, this is the creaming method of mixing. We're building an emulsion, and I'm going to show you how to do it. And you've probably done it already and never even knew what you were doing, because sometimes, you know, you don't realize, but you are building it. There's a lot of science to baking. So I have 2 sticks of light butter. So this is butter that has probably half the saturated fat as regular saturated butter. Take a look for a nice brand in the grocery store. Make sure it doesn't have a lot of gums or gelatins to it or a lot of water in it. And you should be able to read the ingredients. So get a nice high quality brand. 2 cups of granulated sugar. You can use sugar substitutes. I don't always like the way they taste, so I am choosing not to. But we're lightening up the fat a tremendous amount, and you can also use moderation when you are cutting your slices of your delicious maple pecan cake. So now we are going to start our mixer on low to medium speed. What we're doing here is this is known as creaming, for lack of a better word. Use your paddle attachment, never use your whip attachment, because that adds too much air into your ingredients. The paddle attachment, now watch, I want you to watch this. You can see your butter, our light butter started out as yellow in color. And as you are building this emulsion, you are forcing air. We don't have an emulsion yet. We are forcing air because those sugar granules are forcing air into that light butter. And the butter's going to turn white, watch, because it's aerated. So as we go up, you can go up to about medium speed. Don't go up any higher than that. And you let it go for a while. Don't rush this procedure. And don't rush it. It may take 3-4 minutes, all right? I have a podcast where I actually discuss what happened when I rushed the creaming method of mixing. And I was making a cake for my daughter's birthday, and it ended up being like that thick. And when I did it again and allowed the creaming process to continue, it got nice and big and fluffy. The reason why the creaming process is so important is it creates these air bubbles or air cells, and they actually are going to meet up as team players with our baking powder and our baking soda. And they're actually going to enlarge those air cells by forming carbon dioxide and getting stuck in the small amount of gluten that we're producing in our cake. When there's a lot of fat, you don't produce a lot of gluten in a cake, and it tends to be more tender. So we're getting to be a lighter yellow color, and you can see we're almost white. And a typical creaming method of mixing cake goes like this: creaming your sugar and your butter, and that's what we're doing now. And then we're going to take 4 eggs. If you would like to use some sort of an egg substitute, you can, but I wouldn't use any more than 2 eggs as a substitute, because the egg substitutes can be mostly whites, and they can be very rubbery. They can give a rubbery texture to your cake. Look, did you notice the color change? Look, look, look. Maybe you never noticed it before, but it went from yellow to a pale yellow, almost a white, and that's because we're aerated beautifully. I'm going to turn it down to a lower speed, and I'm going to add 1 egg at a time. Notice what I did. I didn't crack my eggs directly into the mixer. Don't do that, because when you do that, you're going to get shell in there, and sometimes things happen and you can't control it. I can control when I put 4 eggs into my liquid measuring cup. I actually know if there's a little shell, I can fish it out. Once it's in there, you're not going to get it out, trust me. So once it's incorporated, add your next egg. And I usually go by the yolk. I can just add a yolk in there and enough white goes in, it's about an egg. You can see how it's becoming so beautiful and luxurious looking. Really, really beautiful. And you'll see me scrape down the sides of the bowl in a little while. So once this egg is in, I'm going to add my third egg. We're going to be going into our last egg very soon. This is a very typical method for cakes. We're going to add our last egg, get it all in there, and have a rubber spatula handy. Never put your rubber spatula in while the mixer's going, trust me on this. Bad things happen when that happens. So I'm going to scrape down the sides, get all that unmixed in butter and sugar that might be stuck on the bottom, and get that going. And then just scrape off your rubber spatula on the side. And I know this sounds like, you know, I'm treating you like you've never made a cake before, but some people don't do it, and spending this time creates the best mouthfeel for a cake and the best structure of a cake. Once we have our eggs in here, remember we don't have any gluten yet, we didn't add any flour yet. Now we're going to add flour with our dry ingredients. We're going to alternate them. We're going to do dry, wet, dry, wet, dry. We always want to begin and end with dry. So I'm just going to run and get a spoon. I'm going to add about a third of a cup, a third of my flour, not a third of a cup, but a third of these ingredients. So just just sort of estimate about a third of the bowl. And you want to do this on low speed. So a third of all your dry ingredients goes in here all at once. When you think you have about a third, stop and let them get incorporated in. And every once in a while, you will scrape down the sides of the bowl. Okay, I'm going to stop. And at this point, it's now time for liquid ingredients. So again, we have this beautiful yogurt, fat-free yogurt with maple syrup and maple extract and a little vanilla. We're going to add half of that. We're going to add half of that. Okay? Now I think it would be a good time to scrape down. You can see this batter is looking even more silky and luxurious at this point. It's looking more like a batter. And you're going to scrape around. Get all the good stuff off your rubber spatula so it mixes in. So we just did wet, now we're going to do dry again. So this is another 1/3 of the bowl. Again, just eyeball it. You don't have to measure it. You don't have to go crazy. And again, do it on low speed. The reason is the flour has gluten-forming proteins in it because this is wheat flour. And what you want to make sure you do is if you overmix, you will form a lot of gluten and you will form toughness because gluten is equated with more of a structure. And we want a light, tender maple pecan pound cake. All right, so we're ready for the rest of our yogurt and yummy maple. So you want to get all that out. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to use my rubber spatula to get all that good stuff out. All right. There we go. Get that in there. And I think I'm going to stop the machine and just do one more scrape around. And then we're going to add our final third of our dry ingredients. And you're going to see what a beautiful batter this is. You can actually tell a well-made batter by how it looks. Okay, keep it on low speed. Again, last but not least, our last third of our dry ingredients. We've allowed enough of our air cells to form from our creaming, so you can see this batter looks beautiful. If you don't do this emulsion carefully, you can actually have a batter that looks either curdled or it looks very thin and it hasn't emulsified. And emulsification is just when you add two immiscible liquids like fat and water-based ingredients, and you want them to stay together. And the emulsifying agent here is your eggs. Egg yolk has a natural emulsifier in it known as lecithin. Say that real fast. That's really hard to say. So look how beautiful this batter is. Now you don't want to overmix now because you will develop gluten, but I want to go around, and I'm being very careful to go on the bottom now. And I'm just going to give it maybe 5 more seconds, and then I'm there. Okay, and we're going to go right to our pan. Done. I'm going to see you over by our bundt pan. So we're almost ready to pour our batter into our beautifully prepared bundt pan. So first, I see a little flour and some dry ingredients around the edges. I want to get those, but I don't want to do it with the machine because I don't want to overmix. And it is called, right, this lightened pound cake is called maple pecans, right? So I have half a cup of toasted, finely chopped pecans I'm going to put right in there, and I'm going to mix those in by hand. So just fold them in. I made this several times with a lot more pecans, and I love pecans as much as anybody else, but it was a little too much pecan. So half a cup was perfect. If you want to add a little more, go for it. All right, so once you're done, this particular bundt pan is a little too small to accommodate all of this gorgeousness, okay, this gorgeous batter. So I usually bake this all this batter in a 10-inch false bottom tube pan, not a bundt pan, but a tube pan, if I want to use the whole amount of batter. If I want to use that beautiful little bundt pan, that cute little bundt pan that we prepared, I have to remove about 1.5 cups of batter, and then I can make about 6 or 7 beautiful mini pound cakes in a regular standard size muffin pan. I've even made them in the big muffin pans as well. So just take out about 1.5 cups, approximately, because you don't want this batter to go all the way to the top of this bundt pan. That would be overflowing in your oven, and that would not be good. All right. So now you're going to take your beautiful bundt pan that we prepared, and I'm going to scrape our batter in here. So what I like to do is rotate it. Put a little bit in just to keep it even. All right, rotate it, and you'll fill it. All around as evenly as you possibly can, but don't go to the top because that will be too full a bundt pan. And I've preheated my oven to 350 degrees. And I'm going to bake it between 50 and 60 minutes until you can stick a cake tester or a small knife in the center and it comes out clean. And I like to just sort of smooth it so it's even. All right, and there you have it. Remember, when it comes out of the pan, give it 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes I take a small sharp knife and just sort of loosen around the edges. Take your cooling rack, put it over upside down, and let it hang like a bat hangs upside down until it's cool, and it should come right out. All right, so I'm going to put it in the oven. So our cake came out of the oven. I let it cool like I told you to, upside down like a bat, and look at it. It's gorgeous, but we're not done yet. I'm going to make a beautiful glaze, a maple glaze. What would you have with a maple pecan lightened pound cake but a beautiful glaze? So I have about 1.25 cups of confectioner's sugar, that's powdered sugar, 2 tablespoons of, again, high quality maple syrup. And I'm going to use water. You can use cream, you can use whole milk, but because it's lightened, I'm going to use a little water. And I can't give you an exact measurement, but this is where a lot of people don't make a glaze as thick as they want to. So you got to be careful. You're going to pour a little bit in. Less is more when it comes to powdered sugar. So watch what's happening. You see how it's sort of absorbing all that sugar, and you're going to whisk it. And now it's getting a little thick. So you see it's like really thick now. We're going to add a little more, but don't get crazy and think, oh, I can add a lot more. You just want to add a little more, because eventually you're going to be too thin, your consistency, and we really want it to drizzle over this beautiful pattern, and we want to make it beautiful. So just a little bit. It probably amounts to 2 or 3 tablespoons, maybe not even that much, because right now we're almost there. Once it starts getting stuck in your whisk, you know you probably need a little bit more. See, it's really not, I can't really drizzle that. So just add a little bit more. This should do it. This should do it. And again, if you want to make it a little bit creamier or thicker, as far as richness is concerned, you could use milk, you could use skim milk. But I actually find this is quite nice. And you want to whisk all the lumps out of your confectionery sugar. See how I can drizzle that? That's nice. I'd even like to have that a little thicker if I could, but it looks good. So use your whisk as a tool and come right over to your cake and bring the bowl with you and just sort of drizzle that any way you want. All up and down that those beautiful patterns of those little lumps and bumps on that cake. Isn't that beautiful? And this cake tastes so good, you'd never guess that it has half the saturated fat. It's beautiful. And it's absolutely delicious. What I like about it is it's also easily frozen. And you can actually make it, freeze it, and then you could put the icing on or the glaze on right before you serve it. Did I get enough over there? Let's see, I think I did. Okay, so I'm using this all up, and you can see how pretty that is, but I'm not totally done yet. I made caramelized pecans, and I sort of made them like that animal, that animal that's in the ocean, the narwhal. You know, it's got that long, beautiful horn. And I'm just going to put them on there because I think these look gorgeous. And I'm going to make these for a future video sometime. You're going to really enjoy making these. They're very easily made. They actually are very easily made, and it just makes the cake look stunning. Doesn't that look stunning? I love it. And just stick it on, and I think that's good. Look how beautiful. Isn't that lovely? So that is our lightened maple pecan pound cake for Lori, and I hope you enjoy it. And for more recipes and videos, go to my website, gailsokol.com. Until next time.